Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle presented by FanDuel. We appreciate you being here as we are going to get to the Big Ten UC Investments $2.4 billion deal that's out there. Normally, we do our AP poll reactions, but with the College Football Playoff top 25 coming out, we're going to do this instead. We're going to kind of do this like a news and notes episode coming out of the weekend with Greg Flugaur today covering this UC Investments $2.4 billion deal. Let's bring Greg in here. Greg, thank you so much for joining us. Let people know where they can find your content at before we get started.
Yeah, thanks, John, for the invite. I appreciate it. Sam did a fantastic job, by the way. That was awesome.
Sam was great.
Yeah. College football, speaker on the corner with your host, Greg Flugaur, on YouTube, and you can find me on X at Flug Empire. And that's about it. That's where you find me.
There you go. All right. Well, Greg, we have so much to talk about with everything going on with the UC investments, the $2.4 billion. If there is anybody that just came in and realized Zach is not here, Zach is out of town. He's on vacation, so we brought in a couple of guests to have some experts here on a few different areas. And Greg is definitely covering the UC investments, $2.4 billion with the Big Ten, better than just about anybody else out there. Because what we have going on right now is we have a lot of people coming out and being very much so against this deal. And I'm not saying that this is a great deal and this is something that SEC should take, but this is something that I think does have some misinformation out there. I don't think we're going to be telling anybody that you should like the deal or you shouldn't like the deal today, but I do want to go over what the deal is, why this is something that does need to have a little bit more consideration than just, oh, private equity, it sucks, it's terrible, and we also need to figure out what the heck is going on with Michigan and USC. So, Greg, if you could, go ahead and just go over for everybody really fast. This is not a private equity deal. You've talked about that numerous times on your show. Go over kind of the highlights, what this deal is, why it's different from a private equity, and if there is any common misconceptions you see out there that you might correct.
Thank you so much, John, for giving me the opportunity to talk about this. I appreciate it on your channel. Now, first of all, I do not know if I do not know if I'm for this deal or not, because I don't think we know enough about it. At least I don't know enough about it, particularly around the Big Ten enterprise part of it. Because if it's just about the cash, I don't know if it's a deal that the 16 or 18 Big Ten universities should take. But the deal is basically a UC investment. They have a portfolio of $200 billion. They valued the Big Ten at $24 billion, taking 10% stake at $2.4 billion. So what they're doing, UC Investment thinks they're going to make more than the $2.4 billion, a lot more, in the 20 years that this deal would go for, 2026 to 2046. For this deal to happen among the 16 schools or the 18 schools, the grant of rights would have to be extended from 2036 to 2046. Right now, the Big Ten grant of rights goes to 2036. And what the grant of rights does, it gives the conference Illinois, Minnesota, Michigan, Ohio State, all the Big Ten institutions, your media content is owned by the Big Ten until 2036. Okay. So
just real quick, there's an important distinction there, because I see a lot of people saying, well, the ACC just did that. The distinction there is the ACC did that with ESPN, not just the ACC, correct?
But the distinction is the Big Ten. There are two separate documents. There's the grant of rights, and then there is your media package, your media rights. So in the ACC, when they had the grant of rights going to 2036, their media rights, their current tier 1 media rights also goes to 2036. So they're not renegotiating their media rights all the way into 2036. That's why Florida State and Clemson went to the courts to say we want to find a way to get out of this grant of rights because we can't afford the ACC to keep paying us what we're getting paid all the way to 2036. While the Big Ten gets to re-up theirs in 2030 again, right? And the SEC gets to re-up there in 2034. So in the Big Ten, the grant of rights go to 2036. So the Big Ten owns Minnesota, Illinois, all the Big Ten institution media rights. But our current media rights package, the contract with CBS, NBC, Fox, Peacock, that goes to 2030. So we are going to be renegotiating our contract regardless of anything that else is happening in 2029 and 2030. But for UC Investment to give $2.4 billion, they want to know that this conference is going to hold together for 20 years, not until 2036, but to 2046. So it's never been really a concern, right, among Big Ten institutions. It's like we've been around since 1896, right? The Ohio State Buckeyes have been part of the conference since 1919. Michigan is the quintessential Big Ten university. I mean, Michigan is, wow, I don't know how to say this. I don't want to offend anybody, but they are an incredible brand, an incredible university, a large research university. And John, you know this, Michigan has been very particular in who they would invite into the conference. Okay, I mean, I'm going to be blunt. A Florida State, which a lot of Big Ten fans want Florida State to join the Big Ten, get the state of Florida in the Big Ten. Michigan is most likely against that addition. Okay, that's how particularly Michigan is. So for Michigan to come out, and maybe they're against the deal for good reasons, right? But for them to say, or at least in the reports of Ross Dellinger, that they're not really comfortable with the grant of rights going from 2036 to 2046, it's like, where are you going to go, Michigan, right? Where are you going to go? Because you are so, for a lack of a better term, you are so elitist, right? Where you're not going to go to the Big 12. You're not going to go to the SEC. You're not. You're just not. Maybe you go to the ACC, but you're probably not going to do that because the value is not there. So the question is Michigan and USC being against this deal? And they may have great reasons to be against the deal. Okay. I don't know if I'm for the deal. But according to reports, John, Michigan is not comfortable with extending the rights to 2036 to the grant of rights from 2036 to 2046 because they want their options to be open in 2036. Ohio State's willing to extend it. Penn State is willing to extend it. Of course, Oregon and Washington just got here. They want to extend it. Illinois wants to extend it. Everybody else they have no problems with this, right? Because where are we going to go? I mean, what's going to happen? The possibility of some Big Ten, some SEC, the top brands getting together to form a super league, right? In 2036. Is that the option that Michigan wants to leave open, John? Maybe, in theory, but it's Michigan. Michigan, I don't even think they would invite Tennessee into the conference if they wanted, so it doesn't, there's a lot of it that in that sense doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest things that not everybody understands when it comes to this stuff, because the reports did come out today. I think Ross Dellinger was the one that was reporting it most widely, that the Big Ten is essentially telling Michigan and USC, look, either, get on with us, or we're leaving
Yeah,
you behind, because the other 16 teams in the conference want to do this, and we can argue all day on whether they should do it, they should
yeah,
not do it. I think it's important to know exactly what it is before we have those arguments. So that's why I
yeah.
kind of wanted to
Okay,
start with that. But go ahead.
okay. So the deal would be $2.4 billion, right?
Hmm.
Each institution would get a cash infusion right off the bat. It's going to range between $190 million to, I think, $100 million. We've been told it's at $100 or more million per school. According to reports of today, Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State would get $190 million cash infusion right off the bat. Oregon and USC would get $140 million. And then the rest of us would get less than that, between 100 and 140 million. Okay. That's the cash infusion part, which would total to be $2.4 billion. Then there is this thing called the Big Ten Enterprises that's going to be formed. And I think this is where potentially, but I really don't know, but potentially this is where the true value of the deal exists. This is what all the conferences are trying to create, John. They're trying to create a strategic partner going forward. The SEC is talking to Goldman Sachs. The Big 12 has had many, many discussions with people. Everyone is trying to push out their brand, push out their conference, push out their institutions to other markets, Europe, Middle East, all that big money sitting out there, all that new sponsorship money sitting out there. So they're trying to create a strategic partnership. The Big Ten, there are true believers in this Big Ten enterprise. True believers. This Big Ten enterprise would give a stake of the conference to each institution, plus the Big Ten conference itself, plus UC investments. Excuse me. UC investments would start out at 10% of the stake, okay, of the conference. According to reports, Ohio State would receive 5.5%, Michigan 5.5%, Penn State 5.5%, Oregon and USC would receive 5%, and then the rest of us would be less than that. Okay? So that is so this Big Ten enterprises, which everyone, not everyone, but Ohio State and the big dogs and us little dogs are convinced that this for-profit entity, Big Ten Enterprises, is going to be able to take all of our content, just like what we do in media, right? We take all Illinois, Minnesota, everybody's content and sell it as a big bundle. We get more value that way. The Big Ten network is built upon that. All that third-tier content bundled together is a lot more valuable to Minnesota and Illinois versus what the Longhorn Network could do for Texas. And that's why Texas got rid of it and went to the SEC network happily, because more bundled live content together is more valuable than a standalone. So that is what they're thinking about, like selling jersey patches on jersey, right? Isn't more profitable for all 18 schools to get together and have all these sponsorship bid on the jersey patch of Big Ten football, on Big Ten hockey, on Big Ten basketball? Or is it more advantageous for us to do it all alone, right? Well, obviously, most of the Big Ten institutions believe it's going to be more valuable for us to come together and sell it as one, because there's more power in that. So that's one example what the Big Ten Enterprises is going to do. I wish I had more information on it. None of us has any, or at least that I know of, any information of what this is going to look like. It sounds like it could be a 10-member board. It's going to have a CEO. Who's going to be the CEO? Is it going to be John? We don't know, right? So we don't know what this thing, but this is what I believe, what I've been told, that Ohio State truly believes in, that Penn State they all believe in this. They think they're going to get all this more money in the next 20 years with his Big Ten enterprises. And you mentioned how there's a lot of critics out there, right? Right?
Yes, yes, there are many critics out there right now, and I get where they're
Yep.
coming from.
Yep.
I get where they're coming from. Yeah.
Yep. Here's no matter what the Big Ten does or not do, they're going to be panned universally, right? They're going to be criticized. That's just the way it's set up. I don't want to sound like a victim, or I don't want John to sound like the Big Ten, but that's just the way it is, guys. Most of the college football reporters out there do not want to ever lose access to SEC, to ESPN, to Greg Sankey, and we're out. The Big Ten is the easy way to go for them on a daily basis. So no matter what the Big Ten does, they're going to get criticized. The creation of the Big Ten Network, that was panned universally. When the Big Ten separated from ESPN, that was panned universally. Basically, almost every Big Ten expansion has been panned universally. Like, no matter what the Big Ten does, if the Big Ten wants a larger college football playoff format, every single college football reporter basically is against it. Ross Dellinger comes out and says the SEC is also thinking about a 28-32 team playoff format, but none of the reporters will take a shot at them because they do not want to lose that access.
I have been saying that for so many months, Greg. You hit the nail on the head. The Athletic was the one that broke it, and nobody was talking about that the SEC wanted just as many teams, if not more, in the playoffs. It is astounding to me, and I have been to Big Ten media days. I've not been to SEC media days, but I have heard from friends who have been to those things that just how much these conferences try to get media on their side. And I'm not saying it's wrong that they should, because good media definitely helps you out.
Yeah.
But the SEC does really try to do that, and you see a lot of benefit for them from it. The Big Ten media days, they don't try to do that as much. I mean, you get like a free meal and some water, and that's about it. These SEC media days, they kind of cater to them a little bit more, and it really helps out. And I do think that is shaping a lot of people's thought process when you see every person out there, and I'm not trying to call anybody out, but just a few names, like Stuart Mandel has been out there a lot criticizing the Big Ten. There were a couple people today on Twitter that were criticizing the Big Ten a lot for something like this. And my message is always read it for yourself, think for yourself about it, because there are people in media that do want to just try to shape the narrative in a certain way because of their personal feelings on it.
Yeah, they a lot of them have an axe to grind, and then John, like, if we all wake up on November 21st and this deal gets done, right? Let's say it gets done. And then we'll get into the ramifications if it's 16 versus 18 schools, because that whole thing is wild, right? But let's say we wake up on November 21st and the deal gets done. Okay. Well, what's probably going to happen, let's just pretend it does happen. Let's say the SEC follows up and does basically the same type of deal with a different capital, non-private equity firm, because it's not a private equity deal. There's not a private equity firm, public capital. Let's say the SEC does the exact same thing, but they do it with some Florida pension fund, whatever. And they create the SEC enterprise thing. Well, they're not doing it. They're not going to follow up and do it after the Big Ten does it because they think it's a bad idea, right? They're going to do it because they think we've been looking at it as well. And the Big Ten were the first to jump, and we're going to jump now. And you're not going to have reporters. You're not going to have reporters jumping on them. You're just not going to see it. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. You're not going to see it. So that is what that is something that I'm looking forward to if the Big Ten does pull the trigger on this.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, because all this is being Ross Dellinger with his article this morning, it sure seems like, John, I would like to get your opinion on it, but it sure seems like those 16 universities truly believe this is the way to go. And if they pull the trigger and do this, John, what do you think Michigan and USC ultimately do?
Yeah, I tweeted about it a little bit today. I think Michigan and USC climb on board. I think that right now, Bobby Mack, who is John? I'm John, Bobby Mack. I go by JR on here, but I also go
Oh,
by
I'm
John as
sorry.
well. So
I'm
no, you're
sorry,
fine. You're fine.
JR.
I go by both.
Sorry.
Zach is normally on here with me, and he's the one that calls me JR the most.
Got it.
No, you're fine, but either one works. But I do think that Michigan and USC will hop on board unless USC has some other big reason that we don't know about, because the biggest thing seems to be that big payout that Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State are getting. That's about a $50 million difference. I don't know if that's the only reason, but if that is the only reason, I think they jump on board just because of the potential of more money in the future. And then I think Michigan right now is dealing with, not being the main decision maker here, as you pointed out on your show earlier. Today, Ohio State is really the big decision maker here. This is really a Tony Petitti and Ross Bjork baby kind of together here, them working on this project. And I think it comes from Ross Bjork's background with how much of a businessman and a salesman he is, and then Tony Petitti with what he did with the MLB Enterprises.
Yes.
You had a caller point that out today, and I
Yeah.
thought that was a fantastic point. So
Yeah.
I think all of this stuff coalescing together, it leads Michigan and USC eventually hopping on board with it. Number one, because I don't know if their reasons are good enough to completely, seclude themselves from the Big Ten. And then number two, if they do seclude themselves from the Big Ten, I know independence works for Notre Dame, but it doesn't work for everybody. I know that other conferences are out there, but the SEC is not just going to let you step in right away. Number one, and number two, like you pointed out, Michigan doesn't want to be in a conference with some of the teams in the SEC
No.
and stuff like
No,
that.
they
So why would they want to go away from the Big Ten when they could just stick around and try to build up their influence and things like that a little bit more?
And to be honest, over the last 40 or 50 years, Michigan has had more influence than Ohio State. Ohio State's never really wanted to take the leadership. It's always been a Wisconsin-Michigan faction that has basically led most of the decision among the Big Ten. And Northwestern and Minnesota and Illinois follow behind. And Iowa usually goes with Ohio State, and Nebraska can be either way. And like when we added Oregon and Washington, Iowa was against it. The Buckeyes did not really want to do Washington and Oregon. But at the end of the day, they acquiesced because most of the conference wanted it. And they got some promises that they were going to call the next shot on realignment. And then, of course, when you're talking about the next conference expansion or realignment, JR, the Big Ten has been playing. Not that nothing is settled or nothing is done, but the Big Ten plan has not been to stay at 18. It has been to go to at least to 20. So I mean, I've done a couple live shows on it. Mark Coyle, the athletic director of the University of Minnesota, who is the most cautious person out there, he cannot win a news conference. He can't. He doesn't want to be in front of the microphone.
Yeah.
He basically has an interview with the St. Paul Pioneer Press about 6 weeks ago, and he says the Big Ten will expand again. It's going to happen within, he said, if it's 2 days or 2 years, somewhere along. I mean, basically, he's like Jim Smith of Maryland, basically saying, yeah, it's going to happen.
Yeah, that was our buddies over at IMS Radio. They did an interview. We picked it up right away, and
you guys.
That's one of our most viewed videws.
You did a great job, and I picked it off of you. And but that's like how embedded. They've war gamed all this out. I don't think they know exactly what they're going to do because SEC is also planning. But so to get back to this, how would this affect those decisions? Like if, for example, Miami, let's say Miami wanted, Miami, would you see investment give Miami $100 million, $120 million, right? and then Miami gets 4% or something, and of course Illinois loses a little bit, Minnesota loses, we all lose a little bit to give the stake to Miami, but we would also get a little bit more money. How does that affect conference expansion? By getting back to what you said about, like, where would Michigan go, right? If the Big Ten does this deal and the SEC does this deal, what is the ACC and the Big 12 going to do? Are they going to? They've been trying this now. Let's be honest. The Big 12 they've been trying to do something like this, but your Utahs and your Kansas have been saying, I don't know if I want to sign this long grant of rights with the Big 12 to extend it from 2030 to 2045 or 46 because Big Ten might be knocking on my door. So again, if these other conferences, are they going to follow up? And if they do it, they're going to have to extend their grant of rights for a long time. So, like a Michigan, if they go somewhere else, they're going to be signing a long-term grant of rights. So I just don't think that's an option for Michigan and Michigan and USC. I think their only option is if they don't do this deal, they don't do the deal, and they see all the other Big Ten schools receive a cash infusion, which may not bother them too much, but then have all the other schools have a stake in the Big Ten enterprises. When they don't, I think that might be what gets them on board. And I think you might be right, JR. At the end of the day, I think they're probably going to jump in.
Bobby Mack brings up a good comment here. Appreciate you being here, Bobby Mack. He brings up a good comment here, and I think that this is important for us to look at and distinguish a little bit because Bobby Mack says the deal reminds me of Chicago's paid parking sale when they will lose $100 billion on the deal just to get quick cash. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, Greg, but the difference between something like that and something like this deal is that in that Chicago paid parking deal, if you're familiar with what we're talking about here, that was when they were basically selling ownership to the parking meters and stuff like that in Chicago to a private equity group instead of selling off a stake, which is what they would, the Big Ten would be doing here. So there's no ownership involved of the UC investments, and that's kind of the big part that needs to be understood by people to where this wouldn't be UC investments coming in, owning the Big Ten and telling everybody what to do, that kind of stuff. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. However, so if this deal gets done, UC Investments would have a 10% stake of future earnings. Okay. But they're not going to have a vote on Big Ten. They are and they're not. Okay. They're going to have a seat at the board of the Big Ten enterprises. So this for-profit enterprise that we're all trying to get more money, right? UC Investment they're trying to get back their $2.4 billion plus a lot more. And all the other members of the board, which is all of us Big Ten schools, we want to get more back from what if we wouldn't have given the 10% stake. So we're trying to create bigger revenue streams in which the belief is we can if we all do everything together. This is a 20-year deal. After year 15 or on year 15, UC Investments can sell their stake. Okay? They can sell their stake back to us, back to our schools, or sell it to another firm, but then there's only 5 years left on the deal. Okay? And then after that, maybe if it's a great success, you do something else. So the question is, now, JR, you're an Illinois guy, right?
Illinois and Ohio State, yes.
Okay, Illinois and Ohio State. I don't want to offend you this side of your family, whatever. Okay.
They're pretty much together in this, so it's both ways.
So let's just take Illinois because Ohio State's going to be fine no matter. Okay, Illinois. Let's take Illinois. Okay, how much in the next 20 years Illinois has to figure how much money am I going to make in Big Ten conference payouts That includes media money. That includes Big Ten Network third tier money. That includes NCAA tourney credit, blah, 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 blah. Conference payouts. How much money am I going to earn in conference payouts from now into 2046 without this Big Ten Enterprises, without us giving 10% to some UC investment fund, without the $120 million Illinois? How much money are we going to make now versus how much money are we going to make if we give 10% of our future earnings to UC investments, but we get $120 million cash infusion and we have this for-profit Big Ten Enterprises? I don't know the answer to that, right? Because I know nothing. I barely got 2 quarters that scratched together in my front pocket. I'm not a high finance person, and I don't know nothing really about the Big Ten Enterprises. But Illinois seems to have determined, along with everybody else, except for Michigan and USC, that we are going to make a whole lot more money doing this way versus not doing it. Having a strategic partner, creating our strategic partner as Big Ten Enterprises. And, in all these other conferences have gone down this road, all of them. We're not doing anything in a vacuum. The only thing that makes the Big Ten different is, the ACC, of course, has a whole bunch of issues, right? I mean, you just had 2 schools suing the conference. So the ACC ain't going to be the first one to do it. The Big 12, they have a couple of schools that do not want to sign their next 15, 20 years to the Big 12 because they think they have an opportunity to get to the Big 10. So the Big 12 probably ain't going to be the first one. So now it's between the SEC and the Big Ten, and we're probably going to be the first to do it. But when we do it, others are going to follow.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
It's like the Big Ten Network.
Yeah, same with the Big Ten Network because this is kind of the way the Big Ten has been, and I think that there's been times when it's worked well for them, the Big Ten Network, and then there's also been times where it didn't work well. The 9-game conference schedule is another one where that's kind of bit the Big Ten in the butt a little bit, but thankfully the SEC is now moving over to that kind of stuff. I know that's a different one, but I agree with you that the Big Ten has continually gone out in front, done this stuff, and it does look like the SEC, the Big 12, they're going to kind of be following behind a little bit with it. The Big 12 looks like they have more private equity deals that they're looking at than rather these kind of investment deals, at least from what I've seen and heard, which I think if it's private equity, I'm not for it at all. But this not being private equity, I see a little bit it a little bit different. So I do want to talk about Michigan and USC one more time. So we talked about where would they go. Greg, with all of this stuff coming out, is it actually a possibility, in your opinion, that the Big Ten could leave Michigan and USC behind? Or do you think Michigan and USC could call their bluff and they wouldn't actually do it? Because Michigan and USC are very big brands that obviously contribute a lot to the amount this deal would be. I think if UC Investments does this deal, they're going to come back and say, you don't have Michigan and USC? Okay, we're going to knock that valuation down a little bit more. What do you think?
Well, I'm hoping that Ohio State, Penn State, and the rest of the Big Ten and Tony Petitti have talked to UC Investments and know what value they would get if Michigan and USC were not on board. But yet they're still willing to possibly vote on this on November 21st, right? You would think, now I might be completely wrong. Usually I am, JR. Usually I am. But you would think that Tony Petitti and President Carter, Ohio State, and Bork, whatever, they've talked to UC Investments and they've said, if Michigan and USC not on board, how much, what kind of scratch are we looking at? How much, all that stuff has been talked about. It had, in my opinion, it just had to be. No matter what happens, the grant of rights goes to 2036. Okay? No matter what. No matter, okay, let's pretend that the 16 schools do pull the trigger. And the board of trustees at USC, because they don't have a permanent president, still balk at the idea. The 8-member or whatever board of regents at Michigan still balk at the idea. Okay. The Big Ten grant of rights goes to 2036. That doesn't change this. Okay. Having the deal with the UC investment deal, the other 16 schools going to have to sign an extension grant of rights from 2037 to 2046. So that happens. So Michigan and USC is in the conference until 2036, unless they want to go to the courts like Florida State and Clemson did. And maybe they'll have success, right? Maybe they can find a way to buy out of the conference. I don't think any of that's going to happen. But strange things have, yeah. So I don't think, I just don't see it happening. But if the 16 schools sign on the dotted line and Michigan and USC don't, it's going to create a fracture in the conference, right? It just is. And that's not good for the conference. USC and Michigan are, massive, incredibly valuable universities. They're not really replaceable. Now, there are going to be there are other schools knocking on the door right now tonight for months since the ACC settlement. There are schools positioning themselves, negotiating, possibly in the future when a lot of things have to get settled in this college football world of the SCORE Act, the SAFE Act, and all this other stuff that's going on. When all that gets settled, hopefully someday, there's going to be some more movement. And there are going to be schools going to happily take an investment deal, right? There are going to be schools happily take the unequal revenue share that the Big Ten will be offering, right? Let's say Georgia Tech. Let's say Georgia Tech wants to come into the conference. They're probably going to be getting what, my lowly Minnesota Gophers are going to take, right? They'll probably get that. Probably no higher than that, which is a whole lot more than what they're going to get in the ACC, right?
Yep.
So there's going to be people trying to get in. So if Michigan and USC really want, if this is a fracture which leads to them leaving, it's going to hurt the Big Ten. It is. I think it probably hurts Michigan and USC more, though, to be honest. Because Michigan is a Big Ten, and USC is as well. I mean, the reason why USC joined the Big Ten was because they knew what the future was. They knew what was going to happen. They knew the student athletes were going to get direct payments. They had to get above the revenue stratification line. This is all the stuff that I reported in 2022. So this is what USC wanted, right? And I don't blame USC for not. I get it. I get it. They think they deserve as much as Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. They deserve the same tier, right? The $190 million and the same revenue, But the other schools have spoken. I'll give you an example, JR. I'll give you an example. Let's just pretend Illinois has a 4.8% stake in the conference. Okay. Minnesota has a 4.6% stake. Illinois is a bigger brand. Illinois is a bigger state. Illinois, a bigger overall market, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Minnesota can sit here and go, I don't, Illinois, I mean, we should be getting the same as them. We created this conference in 1896 and blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, when you see all the schools coalescing around, no, Illinois, 4.8, and Minnesota, eventually Minnesota's got to be like, okay, is this deal good for us or not? Is it good for us? Okay, we're for it, right?
Right.
The other schools have decided that the number they're getting works for them, but that doesn't seem to be the case for USC.
Well, I think the biggest thing with USC is that, yes, I understand where they're coming from. I also understand, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State have been a part of this conference for a long time. Penn State, they came in the 90s, but they've still been here a while and they've helped build this conference up to what it is, but there still is the opportunity for the unequal revenue being made based off kind of what the ACC is doing with, enhancements due to whatever it might be, a TV viewership or whatever else. So if USC does believe in themselves and does believe in their brand enough, eventually they would be making as
You're
much as
right.
or should be making as much as Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. Do you see it the same way?
I agree with you, and thanks for bringing that up. I mean, in this deal, supposedly there's a way for you to improve yourself, improve
Mm-hmm.
your stake, improve your revenue money. In USC, I think is well on their way to doing that. I see Bobby Mack in the chat room says, "What is Ohio State like? 20% of the conference valuation?" That might be so. I mean, look, Ohio State is not getting the percent of stake that they're really worth, right? Let's
Mm-hmm.
be honest.
Which I think that's why everybody's so kind of perplexed why they're the ones kind of leading this a little bit,
Be,
right?
be, be, yeah, but I think it's because Ohio State and other people have realized that you are more valuable, everybody but Notre Dame, that you are more valuable together than you are as a standalone. Okay. Your content bundled together has more leverage over the media partners than alone. Like Notre Dame, the reason why Notre Dame is loading up their schedules lately, like having Clemson and now is because NBC has told them you have to have this top tier scheduling for you to max out on the NBC deal is a sliding scale deal, unlike our deal,
Mm-hmm.
because it's more of a risk for NBC because Notre Dame is a standalone university. If Notre Dame comes out and starts the season 2-5, the rest of the games aren't really of that much value to, and they lose value quickly. In the Big Ten, you are more secure. Your media partners are more secure, so they're going to pay you more top dollar, right? So Ohio State has learned, and they've learned this a long time ago, that being in the Big Ten, playing in front of big markets, right? Markets that have purchasing power, markets that the national advertisers love. When the Big Ten game has 2.4 million viewers, let's say, the purchasing power for the national advertisers in Big Ten markets of a $2.4 million football game is probably worth as much as a 4 million viewed game in the SEC. That's demographics, that's purchasing power. That's what the national advertise. That's why they pay so much for Big Ten content. So Ohio State knows that yes, they're the biggest, entity of the conference, but they would rather surround themselves with Illinois. By the way, Illinois and Ohio State are very tight. Those schools are very. They don't. Ohio State don't want to lose Illinois. Okay, Ohio State would not trade Illinois for Tennessee. Straight out. Period. End of story. Ohio State does not want to lose Northwestern as a conference meet because of the incredible value that Northwestern gives when it comes to research dollars. So all this plays a part in it too. So I just wanted to bring up Bobby Mack's statement. Yeah, Ohio State 20%. Yeah, could be,
Mm-hmm.
could be, but they don't want to. They don't want the. And Michigan's been like this too. Michigan doesn't want to give up the Big Ten. They are
Right.
So that's the whole Michigan thing. I would not have said that if you would have Jr. If you would have said Greg, predict the two schools that would, kind of not be for extending the grant of rights. Michigan would not be one of the schools I would have said.
Really, yeah. Well, Michigan has been such a big part of the decision making of the conference for so
Yes.
long. I don't really know what they're getting at here in certain areas. I'm not going to call anybody out, but they've had a little bit of their regions and stuff go out there calling this like a payday loan and different things like that. And I get where they're coming from. They're trying to get their audience and get their fans against it because for whatever objective they might have. But I think you're right, and that's the missing part of this conversation that a lot of people have when they say, well, it's not good for the top five of the Big Ten, but it's good for everybody else. Research dollars are a big thing, and Northwestern brings in a ton of research dollars for this conference. And, I know a lot of people make fun of Rutgers and Maryland and say, they don't belong, or, UCLA, what they come here for. But the fact that you get games with UCLA and Rutgers and Maryland and Ohio State and Nebraska, that's what's going to make this Big Ten Enterprises to me so valuable for them to go out and say, listen, nobody wants jersey patches. I get it. I don't want jersey patches either, but this is the way college football is going, and I'm not going to sit here and just complain
Yeah.
about it. I'm going to actually talk about what's going on. And those jersey patches are much more valuable when you sell them to 18 teams that are nationwide rather than saying we're going to put Kroger patches on Ohio State, Purdue, and I don't know,
Yeah.
whatever other state has Kroger in it. I don't know what every single state Kroger's
Yeah.
in, but
No, I think you're absolutely right. And a good example of like Brett Yormark, let's take the Big 12, for example. Brett Yormark has spent a lot of time, a lot of political IOUs that were owed to him because he did such a great job with the media deal and was able to poach the Pac-12. And Brett Yormark spent a lot of time trying to get UConn into the conference. Okay. The reason why he was trying to get UConn in the conference is because he realized that the Big 12 needs a better blend going forward. They've got a lot of schools with a lot of great support, fan base, right? Good brands, none of them really massive, but good brands, But Brett Yormark understood that he needed a bigger market, a bigger Big 12 market, a UConn, East, get the Eastern media market, media to pay more attention to the Big 12. That's why Delaney got Maryland and Rutgers for demographics and plus their AAU and population, but they also wanted the New York media market to talk about Big Ten more often, and that's worked. Well, that's what Brett Yormark wanted, right? He wanted UConn to come in also because the people that he was talking to about creating a strategic partner to get a private equity deal or a public capital deal, whatever, some of those those firms wanted UConn as part of the deal because they look at the Big 12 and they say they're missing this, they're missing that. That's why the Big 12 can't get a conference network, right? Because they just don't have the big enough market. So that's, the Big Ten has always been conscious of having the right blend. Oregon and Washington. Oregon is this great brand multiplier, incredible brand, right? Washington is this huge research university. Seattle is a huge media. It was the perfect blend. Washington and Oregon, perfect blend. UCLA, USC was a little bit different. Fox wanted all of Los Angeles. UCLA came in. So again, not, if you look at even us lowly Big Ten schools like Minnesota, my beloved Golden Gophers, right? We're kind of unique. We're kind of, we don't offer football play. We don't, there's a lot of things we don't do. Our basketball program is going to be at the bottom again. But we're the 17th largest market. We have huge purchasing power in Minnesota. We provide the hockey players. We all have our parts, right? And I can't imagine Michigan and USC wanting to figure out another stable of schools. There's no, USC had an option to go independent, but they looked at it and said, nah, it doesn't measure up to the Big Ten because standalone is a risk.
Right.
And what
Well, and
about Notre Dame, JR?
yeah.
What about Notre Dame? What if the Big Ten pulls the trigger on this?
Well, and like I've talked about with Notre Dame before, to me it's going to come down to the scheduling at some point, and we're already seeing the scheduling, as you pointed out, with them needing to schedule bigger games so that way they can, get the max amount of money from their NBC deal. That playing bigger games so that way they can get into the college football playoffs, and then on top of that, you have teams like USC that are saying we don't want to play you outside of week 1, 2, or 3, and so some of these schools that they have traditionally played for years like USC is saying, well, we need to play you at this time instead because of the travel and everything else going on with our program, which is going to make it even harder for Notre Dame to try and schedule these things. At some point, if Notre Dame has like 2 years in a row where they only play 8 Power 4 teams again, I
Yeah,
think that happened last season. That is not going to be a very good situation for them, and I think that is probably what will eventually move them to the Big Ten or something else. They better just hope that it happens in a time period and when the Big Ten will still take them. I don't see a reason why Big Ten wouldn't take them, but
yeah,
I also didn't see, UC investments coming, so who knows?
yeah. But what if the Big Ten Enterprises happens and it becomes really obvious that this thing probably is going to work, like really good, right? Well, Notre Dame ain't going to be able to create a Notre Dame Enterprises that's going to be as part. I mean, it doesn't again, right? The SEC creates it, the Big Ten creates it, even the Big 12 creates it, and Notre Dame once again can't quite. It's just more of a bigger hurdle for them to keep up. Um, so maybe that's another reason why the Big Ten is so anxious to do this. Maybe they have plans. We know they have plans, but we just don't know what they are.
Yeah. I tend to agree with you. I think the Big Ten Enterprises is the biggest kind of mystery about all of this. I don't necessarily like it because of the jersey patches and everything
Yeah.
else that are probably coming, but it is a very important factor. And I think as we learn more about this, this is going to become much clearer. Sorry, I cut you off. What were you going to say?
No, no, no. No. You didn't cut me off. No.
Okay. But that's all I was gonna kind of end with there was the Big Ten Enterprises. It's the biggest mystery of it
Yeah.
all. I don't see Michigan and USC going anywhere. They might balk at it for a little bit, but I think when push comes to shove, they're gonna ride on board with this with for all the points that we've made this entire time. And I think that Big Ten, you know, we'll see how this all works out. It could be really good like the Big Ten Network. It could flop. I
Yeah.
tend to
Yeah.
think the Big Ten knows what they're doing, but
Let me ask you a football question.
okay, go ahead.
So what's going to happen here at the end of the Big Ten season? Are we Ohio State, Indiana? How much of a shot do you give Indiana, and what do you look at the Big Ten schools in the college football playoffs? I do agree with Sam that USC has a shot to get in. Um, a 10-2 USC versus a 10-2 Vanderbilt, who gets in, that type of thing. But so how do you see the future playing out here?
Yeah. I talked about the USC Vanderbilt thing a little bit. I did an AP poll reaction
Okay.
on my secondary channel called JR's Big Ten Football News and Rumors
Okay.
because we weren't doing the AP poll reaction here, so I still want to put it out there. So if anybody
Yep.
wants an AP poll reaction, go in the
Okay.
description. It's down there. You can link to it. But basically, I think USC should get in over Vanderbilt if they are 10-2 or
Mhm.
even if they're 9-3 and Vanderbilt is there because of the schedule at the end of the season
Mhm.
and how impressive USC has looked with their offense. They don't necessarily have just kind of like a one-man wrecking
No.
ball like Diego Pavia. Listen, the tight end for Vanderbilt is very good too. Stowers, I think is his name.
Yes.
He's very good too, so I don't want
Yep.
to take
Yep.
anything
He
away
is.
from him.
Yep.
But I think that USC has proven they're one of the best one of the best offenses, if not the best offense in the nation. And I think when you have an incredible trait like that, that is something that should put you over the top when you kind of need to get in. USC on FanDuel right now sits at plus 390 to make it, so they're definitely not out of it. And I don't think
No.
a loss completely puts them out of it, but that loss can't be to Oregon. They have to beat Oregon if they want to get
Yes.
into
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
playoffs.
Yeah. I
Indiana's in. I don't think there's any question. Even if they drop 2 games, I think that Indiana's done enough. I don't see them dropping 2 games, but even if they were, I think that Indiana's done enough that they're going to slide them in there. Ohio State obviously is making it. Oregon, And even if they lose to a USC, I still think they have a good shot of making it. Notre Dame could be pretty difficult there,
Yeah,
but I want to see what happens with these next rankings because them coming in at ninth in the college
yeah,
football playoff rankings was pretty concerning to me. I would love to see them above Ole Miss because quite frankly, they're just better than Ole Miss, in my
yeah,
opinion. I think on a neutral field, Oregon, I think Sam was saying it, Oregon would be favored by over a touchdown in that game. I don't think Ole Miss is anything better than what Washington is, personally. That's just me.
yeah,
But I think Oregon should make it, and there probably will be enough parity to get them there. But Michigan is kind of the other one there, and all they have to do beat Northwestern, beat Maryland. I get it, like that they're both
yeah,
away. You beat Ohio State, you should get into the playoffs. You should make it in there for that big kind of win.
yeah.
And as we know, Ohio State's gone into that game the past few years thinking they're going to win it every time. And
Uh,
I think
I
last year's
just can't
the
see it.
best example of who knows what could happen.
I can't. I said the same thing last year though, but I can't see it. I cannot see Michigan.
I can't see it either, but I'm like you. I said the same thing
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah, I think, the more I look at these playoffs, as crazy as this sounds, it's some of it is kind of settled. Like my mind is being switched here even in the last few hours. I really think they're going to put Alabama, Texas A&M, Indiana, Ohio State as the teams that get the bye. Like if Alabama loses that second game, they lose the SEC championship game. I think they're still going to have them as the number 4. Now, I wouldn't agree with it because they lost to Florida State. I would have Texas Tech ahead of them, but I don't see it happening. I think they're going to put Alabama in there. So if they do that, JR, then it's going to be Georgia 5. If they beat Georgia Tech, and it's going to be Ole Miss 6, and then it's going to be Texas Tech 7. Now you're looking at the 8, 9, 10 of Oregon, Notre Dame, USC, Vanderbilt. I think that's the next batch. But I think Texas Tech could go 12-1 and get the 7th seed. And I don't think I'm going to agree with that. I think Texas Tech should get a higher seed, but I think that's what they're going to be given.
I tend to agree, especially when you give favor to a team like Oklahoma for having an injured quarterback. Texas Tech had an injured quarterback when they lost their game.
Yeah.
But I mean, Greg, we both know this. You and I both are fans of Big Ten teams. I know you're not necessarily a Big Ten guy, but everybody in college football can see what's happening with the SEC bias going on right now. It's not exclusive to the AP poll. It's not exclusive to the College Football Playoff Committee. It's kind of the narrative in all of college football right now. I personally don't think there is an SEC team that's good enough to win the national championship this year. I think Texas A&M probably has the best chance, but I don't know if that defense has been consistent enough this year for me to think that they can do it for 4 straight games in the season. But I tend to agree with you because of the SEC, favor and stuff. You're going to see 2 SEC teams in there, 2 Big Ten teams in there because of Ohio State and Indiana.
Yeah.
And then you're probably going to see a load of SEC teams. I would not be surprised at all if you see Georgia, Ole Miss, Alabama, Texas A&M, and Texas get in there. Even if Texas is 9-3, I still think they have a better shot of being in there than a 10-2 USC team, unfortunately.
Yeah, a 9-3 Texas can make it. A 9-3 Oklahoma, I don't think so, but a 9-3 Texas, yeah,
I agree.
I think that could happen. But I think it's going to be very difficult to beat the Buckeyes or the Hoosiers. I think that is such a tall task. When Surratt gets back, and Mendoza is going to. I think those 2 teams. I think Indiana is so incredibly talented with Kamara and Aiden and Pons. And I think they've got talent all over the football field. And they know they're well coached. They never screw up. They get off and on the field. They don't have all these pre-snap penalties. Geez, I'm talking like a golden gopher. So
Well,
Um,
and you're exactly right. They have Kamara, they have Fisher, but the thing that's been most impressive these past few games is the guys that they've had step up as well, right? Charlie Becker stepping up when Elijah Surratt was out. Amari Farrell, Lewis Moore, they've stepped up as safeties for Indiana this year. Isaiah Jones has been fantastic. Tyreek Tucker has quietly been one of the best interior defensive linemen in all of the country, but nobody talks about him because he, I mean, number one, nobody ever talks about interior defensive
yeah,
linemen. I get it.
yeah.
It's not, the sexiest position out there, but he is definitely somebody that wrecks offensive lines out there and does a great job with it. As long as Indiana's offensive line can hold up, as long as they can hold up, because they have some injuries right now. I think if they have all their starters
Wow.
in, I believe in them. As long as they can hold up, they should be fine, and I think they'll make the national championship game. But for me, that's the biggest question mark for them so far. And it's
Last,
not because of talent, like I said, it's
yeah,
because more of the injuries.
yeah. Last year, I was a big Fernando Mendoza fan. I
Mm.
watched those California games. Man, that guy was under pressure. Every time he went back, he was under pressure. And he still completed like 67% of his passes at California last year. He was amazing last year. And then when the news broke that he was going to Indiana, I did a breaking live show on it. And I'm trying to convince everybody in the chat, this guy's great. This guy's even better than Curtis Rourke. And most people are like, come on. I, I could not believe that Cignetti got this guy. And goodness gracious. Yeah, they're
Well,
going to be a tough out.
Greg, I should have been talking to you preseason, man, because I was stupid enough to say that Indiana's offense would be worse this year than what they were last year because I just thought they broke so many records. Curtis Rourke was able to throw over the middle so well. They had the running backs and everything. I thought, okay, the offensive line is going to be improved, but I just don't know if they're going to be able to replicate what they did last year. Long behold, I'm an idiot because
Well, no one
Fernando
is a
Mendoza is
bigger no,
amazing.
no one's a bigger idiot than I am. I say I am the reelected mayor of Loserville City. I kept saying that Indiana was more talented team than last year. I kept saying it over and over and over again. And but yet I said Indiana's going to finish fifth in the Big Ten because something's going to go wrong. Blah 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 blah. And it was ridiculous. I should have stuck to my guns because nothing has other than the injuries, they have played spectacularly. And
I vividly remember one time we had an Indiana fan. I forget who it was. I mean, we have many Indiana fans
yeah,
that listen to the show here. Really appreciate the Indiana fan base. They're a great fan base. But we we had an Indiana fan, and he said, "Am I crazy to think Indiana can go 12-0?" And Zach and I said, "No, you're not crazy, but I wouldn't expect it. Like they
yeah,
do have a tough schedule. Penn State, Oregon, Illinois. Like they do have some tough teams on here. That's definitely something you need to be aware of." But we said 12-0 is possible. 10-2 probably the most likely, but
mhm.
still make the playoffs at that. And long behold, I wish I could figure out who that was because I need to go give him his flowers because he was
Yeah.
exactly right. Indiana's going to go
Well,
12-0
what
this
are
year.
your feelings about Illinois this year?
Illinois struggled with injuries this
Yeah,
year mostly. I do think that the defense was not exactly what we expected. Defensive line got better, but the pass rush just was not there most of the season. Xavier
yeah,
Scott, that injury really hurt him. And then the offensive line for Illinois has just been atrocious. They
yeah,
brought back so many guys. You thought the chemistry was going to be better. They fixed it after the Ohio State game or in that USC game. So that was one of the things that helped them beat USC, but it was too little too late because at that point,
mhm,
once you lost by what was it, 60, 50 points to Indiana, if you lost by that much to Ohio State, I think you could survive. I don't think you can survive losing by that much to Indiana.
yeah,
And as much as people respect Indiana right now, there's still people out there that say, but it's Indiana and you
yeah,
lose by that much to them. I don't know if I ever thought Illinois was going to make the playoffs, even if they went like a 10-2, because they had that blemish on their record.
yeah, yeah. So Illinois, I had them like fourth or third or whatever, and it just didn't work out. It's been a
And
tough year. It's been
and they could still finish high up there. I mean, I keep
yeah,
telling Illinois fans, you could still finish with 10 wins. Like this
yeah,
back-to-back 10-win seasons, that's
yeah.
really good for Illinois to be able to do that. But well,
And,
Greg, since we're talking football, what's your thoughts on your Gophers, man? Drake Lindsay,
it's been
talking
it's
about
been
him a little bit
it,
earlier.
it, if it wasn't for Drake Lindsay, you would you'd probably have to search for me standing on some high ledge, some highway. It's been what's the best way to describe this season? The Minnesota Golden Gophers are the worst 6-3 team in the country, and it's not even close. Absolutely brutal. We have been manhandled, beat up by everybody, except for Northwestern State. Literally.
Well, Nebraska. You guys beat up
Nebraska.
Nebraska.
Yeah, I keep forgetting. But Nebraska has psychological issues when they play Minnesota. But other than that, we have been whooped. Like decimated. Purdue dominated us. Rutgers dominated us. Everybody has just annihilated us. We've got problems. And and I can't even, other than Darius Taylor, I can't even blame it on injuries. It's not an injury problem. It's we've been just dominated, JR. Long swaths of football games. You just sit there and we lose every battle that we're in. Purdue said, oh, geez, we're dominating Minnesota. Let's give them the football game. That's what happened. Rutgers, oh, we're beating up Minnesota. Let's give them the football game. Michigan State had us beat. Oh, by the way, let's give Minnesota the victory. That's the only we're 4-2 in the Big Ten, and we very well easily could be 1-5. And that's not an exaggeration.
Yeah.
Drake Lindsay, thank God for Drake Lindsay, because he has looked good. Way better than the help he's been given. Right? The running game's atrocious. Drake Lindsay has been a godsend. I think he's going to be very good next year, JR. Now, the Gophers won't be, but Drake Lindsay next year, look out. He's going to be the best quarterback on a 4-8 team in the country. That's my prediction.
I like Drake Lindsay a lot. I think he does a good job, moving the team down the field and taking chances when it's warranted. He takes a little, he could take a few more chances, but I also understand the wide receiver talent out there.
He's become a little check downish, but he's got a lot of talent. He's got a lot of talent. He does. He's a good kid, smart kid. That Gophers got issues, my friend. They've got issues.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if PJ Fleck can address him in the offseason.
If he's here, if he's back next year.
Well, yeah, I guess that's true. Bobby Mack with the $5 super chat. Bobby Mack, we appreciate it. He says, internet question of the day. If we had a draft and everyone is eligible, would Ohio State have 5 of the top 7 draft picks today? So I don't know how much you follow the draft, Greg, but this has been a bit of a topic for Ohio State a little bit lately because you do have Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Julian Sayin, Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles. I'm probably running out of names at this point, but there's many of them. Caleb Downs, how can I forget? This is a loaded Ohio State team. Not all of those guys will go to the draft, but if they did, would Ohio State have that many players drafted in the top 7? What do you think?
Sonny Styles is fantastic. I love Sonny Styles.
Uh-huh.
I love Carnell Tate, Caleb Downs. I guess.
What's not to love?
I mean, it's just ridiculous. It really is. And again, I saw someone talking about Tom Fornelli of CBS Sports that said this. It's like Ohio State's got all this talent. They're just fantastic. But they also do all these little things correct. I mean, they it's hard to describe, and I'm not going to waste anyone's time, but the Buckeyes are really like, they have this. I think Ryan Day thinks a lot about recruiting and having guys on his team that have a very high IQ, football IQ, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, the Buckeyes are the most talented team in the country, but they might be the smartest too. Mm-hmm. And that really infuriates me. I mean, because it's just like, my gosh. I see other football programs that have got some talent, but you watch them and like the Florida State Seminoles, that team, their players have to be told, you're in this jumbo package. I mean, you can see it on the side. The Buckeyes are like, boom, 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 boom. It's everything. Ryan Day. It's just a machine out there. So they got all this. Like I watched that 42-3 Ohio State over Minnesota. Buckeyes didn't even. There wasn't even a bead of sweat coming out on anybody on that sideline, and it was just the machine. They knew exactly what they were going to do. I'm sorry. Get back to your question. Yes, sure. Why not? 5 out of 7 sounds good to me, Bobby.
I agree with you. I think that that's one of the things that gets overlooked about this Ohio State team and Ryan Day in particular with the guys that he's recruiting right now. There's a lot of Ohio State fans that have been not happy with the way the recruiting has gone
Really?
this season. They were barely in the top 10. They were hoping to go out there and pay guys a little bit more after they paid $20 million. They've been trying to follow the revenue sharing a little bit more, so they've not been quite as aggressive with the NIL. But now you have guys like Jay Timmons. They just got the defensive lineman Ruffin today, he's really good. He's only a top 200 player, but he is underrated. I think he could be a top 100 player in the country, if you ask me. And they're starting to creep back up there to the top 5. But I don't think Ryan Day recruits off the recruiting rankings. I'm with you. He recruits off of smart football
Yes.
players, guys that are disciplined, guys
Yeah.
that are going to come in, be good culture pieces, because he doesn't want guys that are going to come in and not take it seriously. I just read an excerpt from a book today where Will Howard was saying that basically the entire time in practice, Ryan Day just basically spends the entire time chewing everyone out and just basically saying everything they do is not good enough. And it's like, you gotta be pretty mentally strong to be able to go through a practice where the head coach the entire day is just telling you not good enough, not good enough, not good enough, get better, do this better. Of course, he's encouraging a little bit here and there, I would think, but for him to just basically tell everybody like this is not good enough. That's why you don't see the slip ups against Purdue. That's why you don't see the slip ups against, sorry, Greg, but Minnesota. Like, that's why you don't see the slip ups against some of these teams, because every single time they touch the field, Ryan Day is telling these guys, it's not good enough, get better.
Yeah.
And that's a very powerful motivator.
Yeah. And it kind of like the opposite to me is Nebraska. Maybe they've changed a little bit under Matt Rule, but under Scott Frost and Riley, they would have a top 20 recruiting, 15, 25. I think it's usually in the low 20s lately. And but they were getting guys that 4-star players that the bigger programs just passed up because there was too much issues. Like just Buckeyes and Michigan and the Lions would say, nah, we'll go somewhere else. And so Nebraska would get these 4-star, and it's like, none of these guys are going to work out. None of them are going to work out because they're all idiots, right? But Nebraska took them. So like Ohio State's the opposite. It's like they've got such a high standard. And so if I was a Buckeye fan, which I couldn't imagine being, no offense to you Buckeyes out there, but I would not worry about the rankings. I think recruiting rankings, I think that's the last thing y'all got to worry about.
As long as the guys got talent, you bring them in, they got talent, they got the body structure and everything else that you need. Sounds like Ryan Day is going to turn them into something special there at Ohio State. And if they don't turn into something special, guess what? You got somebody else right behind them. They're playing a freshman right now, Zion Grady, I think is his name. Actually, he's a really good player. He just passed up a senior in snaps this past game. I was looking at the PFF snaps, as I like to do for every team, and he passed a senior in snaps, and it's like, this is the scariest part about this Ohio State team, because they're going to lose a bunch of players again this year, and people are going to say, okay, well, they lost a bunch of players. They can't be good enough again. Well, when you got guys behind them like Devin Sanchez, Zion Grady, some of these freshmen, it's like, okay, you can lose a bunch of players, but you're just going to get really good players right back after them again. And as we know in college football right now, that's the hardest part of your roster, is stacking talent. And I don't know if there's anybody in the country right now that's stacking talent like Ohio State is.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right. Well, Greg, thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything else that, whether it's private capital related, UC investments, football related? Is there anything else you would like to bring up before we get out of here?
No, I think we covered it. I do appreciate you having me on, JR. Hopefully you have me on again. I hope I didn't talk your ear off too much.
Oh no, I loved
If
it.
I did, I apologize. Sorry to bring the negativity about my beloved Golden Gophers, but it's been, been rough. It's been
Greg,
rough.
the number one thing we say on this show is that we talk every single Big Ten team. There is not a Big Ten team out there. Sometimes Big Ten shows, and I'm not trying to call anybody out here, but not just Big Ten. Sometimes SEC shows will kind of have their favorites, and we do have some of our favorites here. We like to talk Indiana and Ohio State and Illinois a lot, but we talk every single Big Ten team. If there's a game that goes on that weekend, you can bet we're going to bring it up in the recap. If there's a game going on the coming weekend, you can bet we're going to bring it up in the preview because we don't specialize in a certain team here and there. Here we cover every single Big Ten team.
So
if you're going to cover the conference, you're going to cover it all.
So our struggles. It's been smoke and mirrors. That we are the worst 6-3 team in the country, and it's not even close. I
didn't say it. You did, but that's fine.
It's the metrics would say it. Okay, the metrics would show it.
True.
All right, I appreciate it, JR. Appreciate it. I hopefully you have me on again. It's been great. Thank you, sir.
I'm sure we will. Thanks, Greg. We'll talk later.
You got it, buddy.
All right, everybody. That was Greg Flugaur coming in here on the Big Ten Huddle. We appreciate his time, and we appreciate your time coming in to the Big Ten Huddle. No Zach, like I said, but Zach will be back here in a couple weeks. He's off on a European vacation, having a great time. So we will see what happens in the next coming days. If there's any breaking news, of course, you can always check here at the Big Ten Huddle or check the secondary channel we have, JR's Big Ten Football News and Rumors. Kind of dive into a little bit more kind of team specific stuff and a little bit more kind of rumory stuff over there. You'll still get singular videos here as you guys do watch those, and we appreciate it, but definitely want to get more content out there for you guys. So we started up a second channel for that. All right. Please do like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. If you made it this far, 2 hours into the episode, boy, you must really like Big Ten football, and we appreciate it. So we will see you next time, and next time would be Tuesday. Tuesday night, we'll be live on YouTube here, and then we'll have a podcast and everything for a preview, and we'll go over the college football playoff top 25 then as well. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.